welcome to this brief overview about For Norge. I'm just going to run through the basics before I show you the game so far. If you don't know what the Shetland Bus is, it came about really, it was set up by the SOE, Special Operations Executive, who saw there were young Norwegian men who wanted to continue fighting after occupation of Norway. And they found that they were escaping from Norway and arriving in Shetland or Scotland because they wanted to take up the fight against the Germans, and they were being brought over by fishing boats. And the SOE thought, hold on a moment, if these fishing boats can get in and out of Norway, why can't we use them to send in agents and resistance supplies and that sort of thing? So it became a fully fledged operation using Norwegian fishing boats crewed by Norwegian fishermen. In Norway, I think they were called the Shetland Gang. Many of them were trained by the SOE. Some of them were very famous and highly decorated, like Leif Larsen, I think he's the most famous one. And so they started ferrying resistance agents, picking them up, dropping them off, taking over weapons and bringing refugee families back. The statistics are amazing when you look at what they managed to achieve. Now, my game deals with the years 41 to 43, which is basically 2 winters, the winter of 41-42 and the second winter of 42-43. The operations did continue throughout the whole war, but in the summer of 43 they were actually given 3 submarine chasers by the Americans, which made the life a whole lot easier. And whereas after the second winter they'd lost about 6 or 7 fishing boats and 30 crew, from once they got the sub-chasers they didn't lose anything. So there wasn't much of a game there, if you see what I mean. So I only cover the exciting era of the fishing boats. Right, so that's it. I advise you to go and look up the Shetland Bus so you can learn a bit more about them. But as far as this game's concerned, it covers the 2 winters, as I say, and it's designed so that there are 3 missions in the autumn, 3 in winter and 3 in spring of both winters. Now when you play the game you can just do 1 mission, you can do just autumn or just winter of either winter, or you can do just 1 whole winter, 9 missions. But of course you'll want to do the campaign start at the beginning, winter 1, and do both winters, because it ramps up in the second year. Once the Germans get wise to what's going on, they start increasing their defences and their capabilities. So, but as an example, you can see here, this red triangle is the general alert in Norway. In other words, when you're going to be making rolls to try and achieve clandestine things, you have to roll basically you have to roll 7 on a D10, where 10's high. That's most of the skills tests you have to do. And you're going to be upgrading your boat, giving your crew skills, which will be added as DRMs to help you get that 7. But one of the things that is deducted from that 7 will be the general alert. As you can see, it starts at 0 and goes up. So by the winter 2, by spring in the second winter, it starts at 3. And it actually increases during the mission as well. It's always reset to whatever the baseline is for that season. So as you can see, it's at 0 here. But every time your boat is seen or detected and seen as suspicious, which is mainly at night, they were okay during the day as long as they didn't do anything suspicious. But at night time it was suspicious, just the fact that you're out there in the fields at that time of night. And so this is the alert track, and as I say, it starts on 0. Right, so let's have a look at the main game board. Everything takes place on this board. We have the strategic map top right. This is basically where you go from Shetland to Norway and back again. Here, this big empty space here is where we place the tactical maps. We've got 8 different tactical maps of coastline. So the idea is you go across to Norway, and then wherever you happen to land in Norway, each hex will use a different tactical map. So you'll be then switching to this tactical map and moving your boat around this map or along the coast, depending on where you land up. So the idea is on the strategic map, each hex is about 14 miles across. So it's about 140 miles at the nearest point to Norway. So each hex is about 14 miles, so about 10 hexes. And the boats go about top speed 7-8 miles per hour. So we say 7 miles per hour, so that basically means that each hex is about 2 hours, but that's on the strategic map. Once you switch to this tactical map, each hex is about a mile across. So you can move about 6 of these hexes in 1 hour. And once you switch to this tactical map, you use this action track. And basically there's a specific set number of actions which the characters take their actions, and when you get to the end of the action track, you actually move this turn track or hour track along. So the turn track or hour track starts at 8 p.m. in the evening and goes right through to 7 o'clock the following evening. It starts at 8 for no particular reason. I could have set it up anyhow, but I've just used that. It helps for leaving, because you tend to leave from between 8 o'clock at night and midnight. You leave for Norway around that time, because you plan to get to Norway when it's dark. So as that seems to be about the best time to leave, that's why I start at 8 o'clock here, but it makes no impact really. These are the days. Most missions last between 3 or 4 days. So as you go around and come back to the start point, you increase the days here. And as I say, the missions are either 72 hours or 96 hours. So these light coloured spaces are the daylight hours. So at the moment it's set up for winter. But if you want to set it up for, say, autumn or spring, you would add daylight hours here for autumn and spring. And if it was spring, you'd add another 2 daylight hours there. So you basically just you'll basically just cover them up like that to extend the daylight hours, because obviously it makes a difference whether it's light or dark for a lot of the things you do. So those are different maps: strategic map, tactical map. Once you've done your mission on the tactical map, you then come back and then onto the strategic, and then come back to Norway again. That's the way it works. The tactical maps feature coastlines and different buildings, and the buildings are inhabited by people, and you're going to be interacting with them. Some of them will be able to see you at night. So for instance, this lighthouse has got a range of 2. So if your boat comes into that at night time, you could possibly be detected. But it all depends on who inhabits these locations. Is this guy who mans the lighthouse, is he friend or foe? Well, we have a bag here, an inhabitant's bag, and it's made up of patriots. We call them patriots. That's people who are friendly, obviously, to us Norwegians. There are then abandoned. Some of these places are abandoned. You get a lot of abandoned huts and fish factories and things. But that's the friendly ones. Then you've got the foes, which are the collaborators. So there are some informants in here, and there are some quislings. And if anybody has heard the name quislings, this is actually where the name derived. Quislings named after the politician Verden Quisling, who was a National Socialist and wanted to become the Prime Minister of Norway, and he kind of managed it through Hitler after the occupation. And that coined the name quislings, traitors, collaborators. So in this inhabitants bag, we'll be populating any of these locations which we interact with. So for instance, there's a quisling, the orange one. So if he was here, he would be actively on the lookout to see who's coming his way at night time, and there would be a detection test, and the test is harder against a quisling. There's a patriot, green. There's another patriot. That's an abandoned. So if that's what's drawn for that one, that's an abandoned hut. Then there's another patriot. That's an informant. Yellow is an informant. Now it's a lesser version of the quisling. So you'd have to make a detection roll to see if he saw you, but it's less strict than the quisling. So those are the basic characters involved. We have other characters who will be on this map. We have refugee families, the white pawns, who will be making their way to the rendezvous point where you're going to collect them. Each mission will have a rendezvous point. So for instance, it might be that one there. And so the refugees will be making their way to that rendezvous point to get picked up. There might be a resistance member waiting for you. You have to make contact with them. You might be collecting SOE agents to bring back. So they'll all be put on the map. There's also sea patrols. Sea patrols will start at their patrol post here, and they'll follow a strict pattern which allows them to see every part of these fjords. When you arrive there, they'll be starting at different points because they'll be at different points of their circuit, and there are different points numbered. These also move 6 spaces per hour. So if they're randomly placed with a die. So you roll a d6, and if I rolled a 2, for instance, it would go there. That's the second waypoint. And every hour they go to their next waypoint. So the game's very much a cat and mouse game of trying to avoid the E-boats, because before we leave for our mission, we get intelligence on the target hex. So if this is our target hex, where the rendezvous point is, the resistance give us intel as to where the E-boats are at any time on their circuit. So we do know where they are. That's how we avoid them. If we arrive on a different part of the coast, on a different map, where we don't have the intel, then there's some fog of war. We won't know where they are, and we could drive straight into them by mistake. So that's part of the game as well. There's a lot of cat and mouse and fog of war involved. What else to show you? So those are the 2 maps, strategic and tactical. You have the bus itself here, where you keep track of the fuel you burn on this track. You can get additional fuel. When you enter the air patrol area, which is a band around Norway, this whole band here is patrolled by aircraft, German aircraft, but only during the daytime. So you have to try and time your journey so that you don't go through there at daytime, but sometimes it's inevitable. If you do go through there, you then have an air patrol encounter. There are ways of mitigating it, but otherwise, when you have an air patrol encounter, you use this little section here where you have an airplane which is going to strafe you. It's going to attack you from the rear, and there are counters here, 6 counters. 3 of them open fire, strafe, and 3 of them are blank. And you'll be placing one on each of these spaces. And the idea is you reveal them one by one. And if they open fire, they have to roll a 6 on a D10 to hit you. And I can return fire in my boat. If I've got 2 chances to return fire, only 2. So I have to kind of guess where I'm going to do it. Because when I open fire, it's harder for me to hit the aircraft. So for instance here, I have to roll an 8 to hit. He only has to roll a 6 to hit. But if we both fire at the same time, because it's kind of a distraction, on the rolls you both deduct 3 each. So for this aircraft to hit me, he'd have to roll a 9 because I'm firing against him. If I wasn't firing at the same time, he just needs to roll a 6. And of course there are ways to increase your chances. DRMs, for instance, there's a gunnery skill which gives you +2, which you will assign to one of your crew members. Anyway, that's I won't go into too much detail, but that's the combat element against the aircraft. As for crew, we have 8 winter buses. I call them buses. 8 winter boats, 8 winter 2 boats, 8 skippers, 8 engineers, 8 first mates, 8 second mates, and they all got different aptitudes. So let's grab one of the buses and put it there. This is called the Olaf. All boats come with 3 different abilities. Basically, they're DRMs in some of the skills tests. There's a range of skills tests. This one gives you DRMs +2 in gunnery skills test, which we just discussed. It's got a quieter engine. It gives you a +2 in detection rolls. And on the right there, it's very good for observation, for lookout. So it gives you +2 in observation rolls. All the crew come with different aptitudes. This particular skipper has an aptitude in gunnery. So if I was to give him the gunnery skill, as that's his aptitude, he gets +2 for his skill on the rolls, skills test for gunnery, but because it's his aptitude, he gets an extra 1. So if you don't put the same skill as his aptitude, he'll only get 2 for that skill, and the aptitude won't count for anything. So here's our engineer. He's got an aptitude for engineering, obviously, but he's the only one who does have a specific one. His aptitude, Johan Calvo, is for observation. This second mate, his aptitude is also observation, but this one here, Gunnar Clausen, his aptitude is for seamanship. And let's see, a deckhand, that's another observation, and that one is for navigation. Now, when you draw these blind to set up your crew and boat, you have the choice to redraw up to 2. So, for instance, I would have redrawn those 2, and you saw me do it. And so I would end up with this. Now, this is nice because it's a nice spread of skills. I haven't got 2 repeated aptitudes. So that's really good. The orange hex with the number on denotes the region they're from. So B4 is over here, So it's Christian, where is it called? Stavanger way, I think it is, B over there. So the point of that is that if you're carrying out an operation in a hex where one of these guys comes from, you get what's called local knowledge, and it gives you DRMs in the roles. It helps you in some of the roles, gives you a +2. So it's all about getting the number you roll high, so you get your 7 that you need. So these are the skills for the crews. There's a seamanship skill, and I put him under there. He gets +3 seamanship tests. Now the boat also has upgrades. There's a number of upgrades. Just give you a quick look at those. This one is armoured bulwarks. Basically, you get an extra hull hit. So when you've got that on your boat, when you get hit in the hull, there's only 2 hits you can take on the hull. If you get there's only 3 hits you can take. If you get a third one after you've got 2, when that aircraft hits you, the boat will sink. But if I've got an extra hull, I can put it on there. So it kind of gives me a bit more leeway. What other boat upgrades are? There's the same for the wheelhouse. The wheelhouse takes, if the wheelhouse takes 2 hits, that's it, abandon ship. That gives you room to take an extra hit on the wheelhouse. Other upgrades are, you have an auxiliary bilge pump, because very often the waves flood the engine room and you have to pump out the water. It takes hours and hours and hours, and it completely messes up your timing of your mission. With the bilge pump, you can do it a lot quicker. Exhaust muffler, when you're going down the fields at night, your boat makes a noise, and this muffles the sound so you don't make as much noise. So on detection rolls, gives you +2. Extra fuel, very handy. An improved Lewis gun gives you +2 to the gunnery test. Fishing disguise, very important. You're going to be making lots of identification friend or foe rolls, which where they try and see if you're a real fishing boat or up to no good. That gives you +2. Sea anchor makes your boat more steady in rough seas. And a false bulkhead, most important, because when you do get searched by the sea patrols, if you've got anything clandestine, I'm afraid that's the end of your mission and the end of your crew probably. So very important to have this hidden compartment. So that's the boat upgrades. What else can I tell you? There's intelligence. As you go around the locations on the map, you can collect intelligence. And the intelligence, there's lots of different things you can get. Too many to tell you. There's charts, local charts. That gives you +2 in a detection test. There's contraband cigarettes you can use for bribing, extra fuel. This allows you to draw one of these before you actually even get there. So there's intelligence as to who is populating a location. So you might keep away from it. This is H7. This is the resistance intelligence. This allows you to bring in resistance agents, for instance, to help refugee families get from where they are lodging to the rendezvous point. And when you have a resistance agent with you, you're much less conspicuous because he knows the secret routes to avoid locations. And if you did come across a quisling, he can actually eliminate the quisling. It puts your alert up permanently by 1, but sometimes at least it saves the refugee families. So there's lots going on. There are alerts raised, phone calls made to the police patrols will be doing they will leave their police station and do a fixed circuit, but if there's an alert going off, they will be coming over to find out what it is, and they will be coming there, and you might get arrested. So there's a lot of danger, and it's like a big puzzle, really. What else have I got to show you? Sorry, I'm dragging this out a bit, but to make your missions, they're all created on the fly. You have these decks of cards. You draw an objective card, you draw a rendezvous card, and depending on the month you're playing, winter, autumn or spring, you draw a conditions card. And then when you flip them over, it gives you your mission. So let's flip this over. So this mission is to extract an SOE agent. He is residing with a Patriot family. Top left there, the Patriot family. There's 2 rows of icons at the bottom. The top row, the 4 lights, basically means you have to make contact with this family by flashing your torch. It costs an action. You've got to roll 7, and it's an observation test. And the DRMs you can use are the observation skill, local knowledge. If you have someone who comes from that region, you either do or don't when you get there. And finally, that observation bonus which comes with your vessel, which we actually got on this demo here. The bottom row of icons tells you the rewards when you succeed in this mission. You get 2 experience, 1 victory point. If you do it in the allotted time, you get a morale boost, go up on the morale track. You get 1 H7 bonus, the H7, as I say, which allows you to interact with the resistance. If you fail the mission or have to abort, the Germans get 2 occupation points, and then the morale goes up 1 in their favour. And here's the morale track there. As you can see, as it goes up in the Germans' favour, they actually get occupation points as well. Occupation points are on these 2 tracks. There's the occupation points for the Germans. This is the victory points for the Shetland Bus. This is the experience track, because it's experience you use to purchase the upgrades and the skills. The other tracks to show you are these tracks here. As the German patrol, this black pawn, as it moves through locations, it interacts with whoever's there. If it moves to a location with a Patriot on it, it will intimidate them. That's the green paperclip. The paperclip was the symbol of the civilian resistance. It actually got to the point where the Germans were so fed up with it, if they would sometimes shoot people who were wearing a paperclip on their lapel. It was that serious. So the intimidation track, once the patrol goes through a Patriot's space, once it gets to 4, the morale goes down 1 in the Germans' favour. The other implication of the morale, wherever that morale track is at the end of the mission, you have to deduct or add your experience. So for instance, if I can successfully complete this mission, I get 2 experience there. If the morale is currently on 1, I'd get an additional 1 to spend. But if had it been on -1, I would have to actually deduct 1. So the morale affects how much you have to spend on upgrades and that. So that's why it's important to try and get back in time, because I'll show you the rendezvous card now. So this rendezvous card tells us where the mission will take place. It will take place on the hex B6, Egersun. So B6 is right over there. So what we'll be doing is putting our course marker there. And what we'll be doing is putting waypoints where the line from B6 goes to Shetland. We'll be putting a waypoint, 3 waypoints on these waypoint rows where the line crosses these 3 rows. The reason being, there's going to be 3 kind of turns where we get over to Norway. It's kind of condensed, so we don't spend hours and hours getting over there, because it takes about 24 hours to get over there, so we want to condense that. And so you're going to be navigating to these waypoints one at a time. If you're off track of the waypoints, say I am off track by 2 to the south, then my track is going to move 2 to the south. So now I'm going to make landfall too far south. If I finish 3 north, then the track is going to be moved back, but 1, 2, 3. So now I'm only 1 to the north. If you see how that works. If you hit it straight on the waypoint, it stays as it is. So you'll have to watch a playthrough to get the gist of it. But it's a nice little way of having an input into the navigation. And you have calm seas, rough seas, and gale force. And you roll a drift die, which tells you how many spaces you drift into the wind. So of course it's more serious the worse the weather. So we've covered the weather, we've covered the crew, we've covered the boat, we've covered the experience, spending. The rendezvous card tells you the tactical map. That tactical map is number 4. The one we've got here is number 1. So we'll be using tactical map number 4 when we get to Norway. The number 6 there tells you that's where the rendezvous point will be, which location. So that's number 6 on this map. And then it tells you the 2 hexes where the refugee families will start from. There's always 2 refugee families making their way to the rendezvous point. In this instance, 1 and 13. And there you can see 72 hours is the length of the mission. So I've got to be back within 72 hours. If I overshoot and go over 72, I do not get that extra morale boost. So the morale will stay where it is. So that's the reason, because the crews back at base were very, very wary of how long it should take to do these visits. And if you weren't back at the right hour, they'd be very worried and the morale goes down. So we reflect that. The final tile of the 3 is the conditions. In the first winter, the threats are kind of less. So the threats will be on the bottom, but there's no threat on this one. This just means it's gale force winds, and the prevailing wind is north to south. So we'd spin that round like that, and it's gale force. So we're on this dark gale force die, where the drift is between 1 and 5, so it's much more serious drift. If I show you a winter 2 conditions, I'll show you a few things. We flip these and come over here. This particular one, there's fog. The visibility in daytime is 1 and nighttime is 1. Because when you get to Norway, the visibility of the E-boats makes a difference, whether they spot you, how close you can go to them. This one, the fog is slightly better in the daytime. This one, the B-boats have searchlights. They can see up to 3 at night, because really they can only see 2 maximum at night time. This extends it to 3. This one here tells you that the E-boat patrols will only have an hour's gap between one finishing and one starting, because normally the gap is at least 2 hours. This one here tells you that the Gestapo are going to be on the patrols, and that if you have to make a detection test, it's no deduction if it's an informant, -1 if it's a quisling, but if it's a Gestapo, it's -3, which is quite stiff. So as I say, the conditions, this is a full moon. This allows you, the E-boats, to see up to 3 spaces at night instead of just 2. So there's lots of things that change, but the more threatening ones tend to come in winter 2, when the Germans are ramping up the defences. Anything else to tell you? Yes, the cards. When you get halfway across the strategic map, these binoculars here tell you have to do a North Sea encounter. And this is where you might have an engine problem, or a wave might come over deck. Here goes the submarine is parallel with the boat, so you have to do an observation test. There's a problem with the rudder, and you have to do a seamanship test. And a lot of these result in you being delayed, which is not a good thing, because sometimes you can end up either having an air patrol attack because you're now in daylight in the air patrol sector, or it might mean you arrive at the coast in the daytime. These are the rendezvous cards. When you finally do your mission on the rendezvous point, these are the cards you're going to be drawing. So it'll give you a test to do. So for instance, this one, contact is made but sudden gunfire erupts from the inland. The agent is under fire by an unidentified stranger on shore. Can you provide cover and fire? So that's a gunnery test. Unusual that you should use this on the shore, but it is possible. This one here is an identification friend or foe test. A local is a bit suspicious, and you've got to convince him you're a fisherman. So how much does your boat look like a fishing boat? Does it have fishing nets all over it? Have you actually got fish you've caught there? Or does it look suspiciously like something else? So all those on the right are the DRMs you can use to mitigate this role and pass it. So for instance, if you've got the cigarettes there, the contraband cigarettes, that will give you +1. That might make the difference, bribing this guy. So that's just the extract agent. There's a deck for refugees. There's a deck for sabotage. There's a deck for passing intel to the resistance and inserting agents. So as an action, you will do the test. And if you're successful, you can then pick up your package or your agent, or drop him off, and then pick up the refugees and go. But if you fail it, the implications are you have to try again, time delays, and also you might get patrols alerted. So there's a lot going on there. I think that's more or less it. As you rescue refugee families, the extra ones that move to the rendezvous point, you can place them here, and once you've got 4, you get an extra victory point and a morale boost. I think that's about it. There's not much more to tell you. So hopefully you can watch one of the playthroughs I'll be doing. And if there's any questions, just send me a message. Hope you like the idea of it, and thanks for watching.